and the meeting is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
In the book Collectania, Gilbert Carpenter said the rule in Mary Baker Eddy's household was simplicity, accuracy, and economy. Excuses are intolerable. I love that and have been working to realize those qualities in my own home and work as well. However, sometimes I have gotten too human about it, focusing on being more efficient and allowing that desire to make me frustrated when things don't fall into place. A thought came to me the other day that is really helping me. I am not a gear in some infinite machine. I'm a child of God. And since I'm not a gear, I don't need to worry about how tightly I mesh with the next gear. Nor should I become frustrated or impatient when it seems others aren't working to their fullest. I just need to focus on God and listen to what He would have me do, and then do it the best as I can. This is helping me to see that the real efficiency is reflecting God's qualities completely each moment, so I don't need to go back and make anything right later. Of course, how much more simple or accurate or economical could it be than to listen to God and do what He says the first time? Mrs. Eddy always knew the right way, and I have no excuse now but to listen. I'm grateful for all the lessons I am learning here in Plainfield, and for the practitioner support and example. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy from Maine. Go ahead.
Good evening. First, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the readings tonight and for the church carousel on the church website, which always has easily accessed and inspiring articles. Thank you to all involved. Second, last week, my husband, who is not a practicing Christian Scientist, mentioned that he had a cyst that had just formed in the roof of his mouth. He had experienced something similar years ago, and it was not pleasant. I asked if he would like me to ask my Plainfield practitioner for help. He said yes. One of the references that the practitioner gave me to study was from our Bible lesson, and it was from our textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. It was from page 365, which in part reads, "If the scientist reaches his patient through divine love, the healing work will be accomplished at one visit, and the disease will vanish into its native nothingness, like dew before the morning sunshine." That was just what we needed. I'm most happy to report that my husband came to me in a matter of 3 or 4 hours after the call to the practitioner and said that the cyst was dissolving. It completely disappeared. We are most grateful for the loving and instant support by the practitioner in this experience. Thank you, Plainfield, and I am very happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings tonight about God's care for our future and for the music. I'm grateful tonight for a lesson I recently learned regarding the importance of making sure I am listening and following God's direction at all times under all circumstances. For many years, I read many books on getting the skills of organizing and planning, and it was constantly thinking ahead in details. But since I've been living the principles of this science of Christ that I'm learning here, I'm seeing it does not hold a candle to God's plan and purpose, and it never gave me a lasting peace. Recently, my practitioner rebuked my thinking when I had allowed myself to drift off into my human planning, my reasoning, my time, without listening to what God wanted me to do. This did cause some disruption and affected my work for God. It was a good lesson to see how easy it is to drift off when you get busy, tired, or with company. It made me appreciate Mrs. Eddy's constant instruction for her students to demonstrate, even in the little things, where it might be easy just to rely on everyday thinking, rather than to lean on God. I am grateful to be part of a church that teaches us to rely on God, and the members that are loving and willing to let you know when you are not doing it. It is for our protection and so that we can be better workers for God. I am continually awed at the perfect detail, order, and blessings, even in the smallest things, when given to God. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Colleen from Massachusetts, go ahead.
Good evening. Tonight I'd love to give gratitude for practitioner help this week. I've been having a little bit of an issue with my teeth, and her help has been just tremendous. I know now that the law of harmony is a law, and it happens in our life every second, every day, every moment, no matter where we are, whether we're in the dental office, whether we're at home, and nothing can separate us from God. I just turn my thought to God, and I know that harmony is the rule, and it's been really, really helpful for me. I feel very well and comfortable, and I know that every moment God's taking care of me, and it's my job just to reflect the ideas, the right ideas that He gives me, and I can do that. Nothing can get in the way of that. So I'm very grateful for the readings tonight and the music and practitioner support, all the testimonies and all of the help from the members and everything that's so good in this church. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth from Georgia, go ahead.
Good evening. During the roundtable discussion this past Sunday, a verse from Ezekiel was read that I don't remember being aware of before, but has really resonated with me. It's Ezekiel 22:30. Quote, "And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none." End quote. I was looking at this up, and at the time, Jerusalem was in a sad and terrible state, and God was saying through the prophet Ezekiel that He was searching for someone who would intercede for Jerusalem and do what was necessary for salvation, someone who'd be a good example, and by his influence would stop the sinning that was going on. He was looking for someone among princes, priests, and prophets who would stand in the gap, and found no one who would intercede for that city. It was brought out in the round table that we can all stand in the gap, so to speak, whether it's for our children, our family, our country, our world, that it takes one righteous man or woman to think the right and correct thought and stand his or her ground, to not give up despite the outside appearances, that nothing has changed, but to keep knowing the truth. And if faithful and diligent, then what is true will eventually be manifested. It includes praying unceasingly for those we love and pouring out that love unconditionally. Well, I would like to say that I've seen fruitage from standing in the gap. Over the past year, I've been praying for guidance for my son and giving him to God. I've been knowing each day that God is governing, guiding, and guarding him. It's been a year of challenges with trying to, him figuring things out and seeing where he might end up for school. And in June, we dropped him off for basic training at a military academy, where wonderfully none of the cadets have access to phones for 6 weeks, but can only receive and write letters. Well, several weeks ago, I received a beautiful letter from him, which I won't read because it will probably make me cry, but it expressed how he appreciated me as a mother and how I've been there for him, and he was grateful that I had prayed for him all his life. He had never expressed it in such a heartfelt way before to me. As an aside, we recently attended a lunch with other parents whose children have already finished their first or second or third years there. And the question was asked, if you were to provide, in hindsight, a piece of advice for new parents whose children are there, what would that be? And one lady got up and said, prayer. Pray each day for them. They are not our kids. They belong to God. And a man also stood up and said, I can't underestimate enough the power of prayer. Just very grateful tonight, and thank you for the reading.
Thank you.
Pam from Virginia.
Pam from Virginia, go ahead.
Good evening. I would like to sincerely and humbly express my gratitude to my Heavenly Father and Christ Jesus for directing me to the Christian Science Independent website. I had been struggling for such a long time with the thought being expressed in a Christian Science church in which I was a member. The congregation was split right down the middle on those who wanted to sell our church home out of desperate material thinking and those who knew there was a right way to resolve the issues that had presented themselves through God's help and spiritual direction through prayer. I found with the Plainfield Church that there was so much good being presented to the newcomer, whether it might be someone that knew very little about Christian Science or one who had been in science for many years. Once you begin reading the wonderful books and articles provided on the website and listen to the Saturday morning Bible studies, the profound roundtable discussions, the Sunday services or the Wednesday evening meetings with its readings and testimonies of healing, you cannot help but experience a comforting and uplifted thought into the spiritual realm of living. This church is on a wonderful mission directed and supported by God to reach out to anyone, anywhere, looking for the truth and spiritual guidance. It follows the pure teachings of Mary Baker Eddy, the discoverer and founder of Christian Science. The church with its dedicated and supportive practitioners are here to help no matter where you are. I am so grateful to be a member and for the progress I have made since discovering this wonderful church and its website. And thank you, Florence, for the wonderful readings tonight and for all the testimonies. I'm so grateful to be here. Good evening.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening. I would like to offer my gratitude for a book written about Christian Science during World War II, titled The Story of Christian Science, Wartime Activities, 1939 through 1946. A member of this church from Ohio alerted me to this book, and also one written about Christian Science activities during World War I. These books are important because they tell about the fearless, dedicated work and workers who, no matter the dire circumstances, proceeded with the spiritual work of Christian Science, demonstrated in very practical ways. Healing military personnel, delivering food in little buses in dangerous areas, traversing inclines in winter that no other vehicles could manage, healing children and animals, opening Christian Science service centers to offer comfort and relief, even reaching German POWs sent to Kansas here in the United States with healing. What an example of true Christian Science. I hear people in my community talk about the unsettled times, that we are living in. Well, Christian Science is the way to help our communities, our country, and the world. Thanks be to God, Christ Jesus, and Mary Baker Eddy for showing us this way. Thank you very much for the service tonight and the readings, wonderful readings, and beautiful music. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
When I first came to the Plainfield Church a few years ago, I was, I guess you could say, quite hyper. I probably had what's referred to as attention deficit disorder. I would occasionally let myself get easily distracted by every thought that popped into my consciousness. But in working with a good old-time practitioner here, the practitioner encouraged me to take time out each day and talk to God. Just talk to Him like a friend, and do this several times during the day. And it was something I had never really thought about doing before then, so I gave it a try, and I found some wonderful things taking place in my life as a result of beginning that discipline. To talk to God as a friend established a relationship with God that I had never had. A real one and a practical one. I mean, before then I thought I knew a little bit about God, but it was always, God out there and me down here, and I'd reach out when I felt like I needed to. And sometimes the connection would be there and sometimes it wouldn't. But when I started the discipline of actually opening my heart to God and talking out loud, I became much, much more peaceful, much more disciplined about my thinking, much more productive about things that God had for me to do. Big changes started to take place in my life. And I think the reason why I'm so grateful for this is it really was the beginning of a real and practical relationship between me and God, something I did not have before then. So I encourage anybody who wants to have a better relationship with God, wants to have a more fulfilling, disciplined life, to do the same. Take time out each day. It's amazing the kind of conversation you can have with God in just a few minutes. So for that help, I'm very, very grateful. For Mrs. Eddy for discovering the science of Christianity and for establishing her own relationship with God and doing incredible things with it and showing us how. I am also very grateful. It's great to be here tonight. Thank you for the readings, for the fine music.
Thank you. Sharon.
Several years ago, a family member asked me to take her to the doctor for a checkup. Her blood pressure was extremely high, and the doctor said I should take her to the hospital right away. Immediately, I knew God was in control and governing. Life is the law of her being. On the way to the hospital, a statement by Mrs. Eddy from Science and Health came to me, and it is, quote, God regulates the condition of the stomach, bowels, and food, the temperature of children and of men, and matter does not, unquote. I knew God regulates those things and that He would regulate her blood pressure also. When we arrived at the hospital, her blood pressure already was lower. They took several other tests, and each time I knew that the only thing they could see was perfection. All the tests came out perfect. Her blood pressure was back to normal, and she was released that same night. I'm so grateful for Christian Science, for the practitioner help I've received and the teaching of how to apply it. And thank you for the readings.
Thank you. Carol.
Quite a few years ago, I was healed of a severe pain in my back. It was so debilitating that I couldn't get out of a chair. And a practitioner from this church healed me. The practitioner discovered what it was, that the burden I was carrying on my back, and it was healed and it was gone, and I have never been bothered by it since. Just maybe a month or so ago, I guess, I was carrying the laundry down to the basement, and I felt the pain in my back. And I immediately stopped, and I declared that there is no return to positions outgrown. And I have outgrown that position that I was in before, and it can't come back. And I worked with that, and in just a very short time, maybe a few hours, if that long, it was completely gone, and it has never come back again. I am so grateful for God's power, and that we can declare his power, and we can hook into that power. And I am just so very grateful for this church, and grateful to Mrs. Eddy for what she has given us, the understanding of God. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia.
I have a testimony from Pilar from New York, and she says this: in the past, overcoming anger and hateful thoughts about other people when I have felt they were mean or not doing right had always been a challenge. On the bus home today, I received several texts from my daughter about her neighbor who has been complaining about her use of incense because of the lady's asthma. My daughter has made several adjustments according to the building rules, and also used fans so that the smell will not bother this lady. But she has been harassing my daughter, has intimidated her to the point that her children feel the animosity. As I read the messages, I could feel anger towards the lady, followed by many awful thoughts about her and other bad thoughts about what I could do when I got up there. Suddenly, right there on the crowded crosstown bus, the angel thought came, "This is animal magnetism, wake up." I thought about the article I read earlier that morning in our magazine, Love is the Liberator, by one of our practitioners titled, "Forgive and Be Free." I had the magazine with me and pulled it out to read it again. I pondered how similar these unloving thoughts were to the writer's what the writer aptly called parasitic vines, and the fact that the only life those vines have is that which they gain from the trees. This meant holding these wrong thoughts was the only life they could have, and I had to stop them. I immediately recognized that I have been hypnotized by these awful, angry feelings and started to refute them. They were not mine, neither are they coming from God. I repeated the words of our way shower, "Get thee behind me, Satan," until I felt calmer, and a feeling of compassion towards this woman replaced the thoughts of anger and revenge I was entertaining a few moments before. By the time I got to my daughter's home, I was calm and able to listen to her, and at the same time mentally deny that what she was telling me was the true nature of this neighbor. We were able to go on with the evening, and by the time I left my daughter's home, she was calmer, and so was I. I am so grateful for the teachings that are given in this church and for the wonderful writings available to everyone on the website. I am grateful for the magazine Love is the Liberator, for the practitioners, and for this wonderful science that Mrs. Eddy gave to this world. And then I have much gratitude for all that I have learned through Christian Science, and especially for what I have learned through practicing Christian Science the right way from this church. Here I learned to love and to trust God more, and to know that fear wears many faces: anger, irritation, Russian superiority, hate, frustration, jealousy, etc. And all this has been very, very helpful, because underneath all these ill emotions is that culprit. I love what Mrs. Eddy writes in the Blue Book on page 142. She says that afraid of what? What does earth hold that can compare with God's omnipotence? Trust to his care. Make faith in him your staff. It will not bend. That's just so beautiful. It rings so true to my heart, and I know how much that trusting God, loving him more, has brought so much peace into my life. I am so grateful to God for all his care and for all that he is teaching all of us. The testimony shows how much he has cared and does care for every single need that we have. Grateful to Christ Jesus' teachings, Mrs. Eddy's revelation and explanation to heal and save our world. So happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
I have quite a bit to read tonight. The first from our church website bulletin board, Massachusetts. I'm very grateful for the helpful articles and inspiring writings on forgiveness in the July issue of Love is the Liberator magazine. The new magazine cover is exquisite. I am so grateful to all who put so much love into this magazine for all of us to enjoy. It is such a treat to read. And thank you, Luann, for the beautiful paintings. They are simply awesome. And then Florida. Thank you for publicly sharing your beautiful magazine, Love is the Liberator, July 2018, on your website. Jeremy did a fantastic job with a new cover, and Luann's paintings stir the heart. Thanks for the wonderful articles on forgiveness. I look forward to reading the entire issue again more slowly to soak up all of the wisdom. Thank you for the burst of light. And then Virginia. Thank you so much for the readings on your purpose as an individual child of God last Wednesday, July 25th. We all really need a high purpose, and this is wonderful to work with. I'm so glad the citations are on the website to use both before and after the meeting. I'd like to express my profound gratitude for the July issue of Love is the Liberator. As lovely as it is on the website, it is even lovelier in person with its light blue cover, the color Mrs. Eddy chose for the Sentinel. It is a wonderful tribute to the discoverer and founder of Christian Science to have this stately, principled, and inspirational cover grace the magazine of this church in recognition of and obedience to the Christ. The articles inside on forgiveness are outstanding and healing. So grateful to the practitioners in this church who love God and mankind and who share and teach us so much. Every page of this magazine is a treasure, sharing many inspirational and practical guides to living closer to God and to being a good citizen. The artwork is also outstanding, inspiring, and delightful. Thanks to all who made this treasure possible, a complete healing work sent out to all mankind. And then the next is New York. I want to express my gratitude for the new edition of the magazine, Love is the Liberator. It is very inspiring, and I love the cover. I'm so glad we are using the original cover as Mrs. Eddy intended. Thank you all for uplifting articles and testimonies from the members. I'd just like to say how grateful I am to hear of that enthusiasm, because that cover was really a prayer I had in my heart. I felt so sad when that cover was changed years and years ago by the organization. I thought they had the copyright to it. I didn't think we could ever use it, and it wasn't until we got familiar with the Smiley book and realized that we could use it that it came to light. And then the beautiful quote where it said Mrs. Eddy never wanted the Sentinel cover with the lady with the lamp ever changed, or the light blue cover. And then Jeremy, with his previous training, knew just how to make it into such a beautiful cover. It really is a prayer come true, and I'm so grateful to be in obedience to Mrs. Eddy, as we always are. Okay, the next is a note from Georgia. Dear friends, I want to send this donation to Plainfield to carry on the great work you do every day. I am sending it in remembrance of my dearest and closest friend, Ann Beals. With fondest regards. And then Virginia, gratitude for the last 2 roundtables. And this was written on July 19th. Thank you for highlighting Andrew Hartsook's works and insights. Thank you for expressing the charitable love that never condemns and always says don't give up. It's never too late. This means a lot to me. The tares and the wheat, love and error and hate, seem so growing together. Thank you for addressing unself-love and for doing a magazine focusing on this. For some, including myself, there's been no examples outside of Plainfield and independent Christian Science of what it is or how to live unself-love, how to live science, how to be merciful, kind, and humane while staying with God's law and not falling into people-pleasing. Thank you to those who do the website that enables us to listen again and again to attune to healing truths. God is love, and I am so joyfully appreciating this. And then this is a testimony from Virginia. I have been a member and participating with the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent for many years. Several years ago, I allowed my feelings to be hurt, once during a visit to the church, when I took a statement said to me all the wrong way. I felt righteous in picking up my marbles and running away. I could have called and worked things out, but my sense of pride would not allow me to do that, and for that I'm very sorry to say. Over a year went by, but still I did very little to keep involved with the church. I did listen online and even volunteered for a reading or two, but mostly I had left the church. I found myself in extreme need this past March and desperately needed a practitioner's help, but I was still too embarrassed to call. Where would I start? What would I say? Finally, with tears streaming down my face, I wrote an email to one of our practitioners and asked if she would please take my call. I had fallen on some ice and broken and dislocated 3 bones in my ankle and 1 in my leg. Surgery had been performed with many screws, nails, and bars, and I was in extreme pain. I didn't even want to go on living, it was so bad. The practitioner answered right back with a loving invitation to call, and so I did. It was very humbling to admit that I needed help and that I had messed up so badly. As we talked about one of my major upsets, I realized that I had misunderstood and had gotten it all wrong. Why hadn't I called and worked it out right away? A sense of pride and personal sense was the culprit. Also, I was so prideful that I didn't want to listen to correction. I had a lot of work to do. With the practitioner's almost daily help, I began to come back to a closer spiritual sense of myself. This journey of learning isn't over yet, but I'm now walking fairly well and able to sit for longer periods of time without pain. This isn't just a matter of healing broken bones, but of healing my sense of myself and how I see the world and what I can do to help others in our mission. I now see how damaging a sense of pride can be, and how I need to stand guard to keep pride out, and fill my thoughts with all the truths told us by Mrs. Eddy. I need to develop and improve my relationship with God. I so appreciate that this practitioner was willing to work with me again and help me back onto the correct path. She continues to work for me and guide me toward the truth, and I am filled with gratitude. Pride can be quite a bugaboo, and all of us have it and have had. Hopefully it's getting better in this church as we learn how damaging it can be and how it is this wrong sense of self, a selfhood apart from God that makes us think we're doing things and we're proud about it and we don't want anyone to know if we're having difficulties, because as we know, along with pride, the other side of pride is shame. And so often, and especially in this church, if anything goes on that's upsetting or where you feel your feelings are hurt, the very best thing to do is to get it out in the open so it can be healed. 9 times out of 10, it is just a misunderstanding. So I was grateful for this testimony, for the honesty of it, and I know I certainly have been there myself, and I'm grateful that a practitioner loved me enough to correct me and kept after me until I was beaten down out of a lot of that prideful sense. So I'm grateful to be here tonight and hear the beautiful music, the readings on our future. It's all in God's hands. And to hear such wonderful, inspired testimonies. Thank you all.
Thank you.